Where do you think the universe came from?
There was a builder, an architect, an engineer behind this building, right?
You have to come to some conclusion. You can get a grip of this understanding, it will change
I'll
your
be
life.
praying for you when I leave here today. And
Over
when I go home.
150,000 people die every single day.
If you weren't a hypocrite, you wouldn't need
They're
Jesus.
preaching
You'd be
to these
perfect.
Jews, Jesus is risen from the dead, and you need to
No,
believe on
where
him.
you stand before God.
He actually paid for our sin in his
You're
life's
judging
blood.
for what you've done wrong, not what you've
But
done
yet,
right.
the God who has given us life and given us our mothers, we disrespect him.
When do you think you want to get right with God, repent of your sins, and trust alone in Jesus?
As soon as possible.
Here am I will go.
Shalom to you all, and thank you all for joining We're the Great Revival. I am Samuel David Spoonhour, your host, and tonight is a very special night. I am having an actually official debate with Ted the Atheist. Well, kind of official. Official for me. I've never really had anything like this before, and I actually did a lot of research, and I mean a lot. I learned so many things about just certain laws of science and theories that deep things that I wasn't taught in physics, which I'm actually really glad that I did it all because I genuinely learned a lot. So first, I want to start with you, Ted. You may present your evidence essentially for your belief. First, I want you to summarize your worldview, whether you're like materialist, naturalist.
Okay. You said you did your research and your homework before you started.
Yeah.
But then you asked me evidence for my belief, which
Well, I want to know
doesn't go together.
No, I want to know if are you materialist? Are you a naturalist? Like what is it very specifically that you believe about the universe? What's your worldview?
I don't concern myself with finding a certain niche there to put myself in. Basically, anything that is said to exist should be demonstrated.
Okay, so you're more or less a naturalist, and that everything that you have observed you believe exists, or give me. I want some more details.
I'm not gonna try to put myself in whatever. I mean, you can if you want to, but
oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, I just I guess these are some of the things I wanted to clarify before we started, but
Okay.
I know our communication was limited, but you consider yourself an atheist. Do you say you're closer to the lines of like an agnostic?
I am an atheist, whether I consider it or not. Atheism is just a word that defines a position where one is without belief in any God. So basically, babies are born atheists because they have no belief in any God. So technically, they are atheists. Everyone is either an atheist or a theist 100% of the time. Agnosticism is just a modifier added to either. It's about believing something, not necessarily a God, but believing something to be unknown or unknowable. So it can be tagged on to either theism or atheism, either one.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I would say slightly disagree with your definition of atheist, because I would say it's more of like someone who makes the claim that God does not exist.
No.
And then
No, that's not correct. The prefix a means without, and then theism, of course, means a belief in a God.
Right.
So it's without belief in a God, which is the literal definition of it. So
sure,
yeah.
which I can understand where you get that.
Someone can say that there is no God, and technically they are an atheist since they are without belief, but it's not required to be an atheist. All atheism is a word used to describe someone without belief. There's no other beliefs onto it or structures, or there's not a group of any kind.
Okay. So, in other words, you could technically be a Buddhist atheist.
I suppose so, yeah.
Because those genuinely exist. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. But
So that would make me the skeptic. So I would not be the one which you originally asserted would need to show any evidence or anything in support of any beliefs of atheism because it has no beliefs. So I would be the skeptic, and then you're the one with the positive claim who says there is a God. So you would have the burden of proof, not myself.
okay. Well, I mean, if I asked you like, what is your worldview? Like, say, if you want to convert me in a sense, then you would have the burden of proof. If you get what I mean. So, like, if you say, well, I believe that there are only material things in the world, then you would hold the burden of proof for that. You would essentially have to, yeah.
Or I would just show that your belief is not held reasonably. I wouldn't need to actually prove anything. I would just need to show that your conclusions are not based, are not, reasonable. They're fallacious.
Okay. It could be in that case then that my, like say maybe I just personally don't reason very well, but the evidence itself is still good, right? Like say if I have evidence for that, I have a vehicle outside and I want to prove that to you, I show you images and pictures, but my reasoning itself is bad, right? I could just have bad reasoning, but the evidence itself still points to the fact that I have a vehicle or even a specific vehicle. So if you get what
you
I'm
could
saying.
be confused, but the evidence would still show that you're right. Yes, but
yeah,
but we still have to see that the evidence is there to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you, Isaac, for joining. By the way.
Yeah, no
Thank you for
problem.
coming
I kind of figured I would try to finish up our conversation from last time. Is my audio good?
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. I totally forgot to tell you, but I'm actually doing a debate with Mr. Ted here. So if we have time later on, I would love to talk to you, or maybe even next week, but I had preset with him. So.
All right, that's fine. I guess I will try to join next week then.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I really am. But I thank you for coming on.
Or you can just stay, right? Whatever.
Oh, yeah. You can definitely stay. Yeah. Mr. Dan, thank you for joining, by the way.
No,
Welcome.
it's all good.
Just got here. Can't wait to hear.
All right. Well, and Mr. Just to everyone listening, please try not to pipe in unless like one of us asks you. I know that clearly Ted has more of a skeptic view, and so he's more or less he's going to try and more like break down my arguments, whether or not they're logical. So I will try my best to share just a basic view that I hold. This is not all the evidence that I hold to. I like rushed to get as much as I could and do as much research and study as I could, especially in the teleological and cosmological arguments. I do not have the moral argument or the philosophical argument that includes math. I don't actually know what that's called. I think it's the ontological, but I think I might be getting that wrong. But I want to first just share some of the teleological argument, and the idea of it. It goes like this: every design has a designer. The universe is complexly designed, therefore it had a designer. So essentially what you need to do then is go further with this. To prove that that's true, you have to prove that the universe is designed, right? That it's genuinely designed, or at least it appears as so, according to the definition, which I would first like to define. Design, I just found this from Oxford definition. There are two specifically, and I think that there's probably a better definition for this, but I'm just going to hold to this for now. A plan or drawing produced to show the look and functions or workings of a building, garment, or other object before it is built or made, right? So like pre-planning. And then the second, it has here an arrangement of lines and shapes created to form a pattern or decoration, which is more in the form of like art, right? So I say like, like it has here is a sample pottery with a lovely blue and white design, right? It's the intricacy of the item and the specific shapes and the way that they are put in patterns shows that there's this mind behind it almost, right? So some kind of intellect. I think that is probably one of the better ways to define design. I know Merriam-Webster's dictionary has one: to create, fashion, execute, or construct according to plan, devise, contrive. So I would say most of it has to do with like pre-planning or having an idea behind it, right? So the probably the hypothesis in general for God's existence, specifically at least some kind of God, would be where the first verse in the Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." So you have beginning, you have time, and then you have heavens, which is space, and then you have earth, which is matter. So you have a beginning of space, matter, and time all at the same time. That's essentially the hypothesis I want to prove, is that God was in fact the one behind it. He was in fact the cause behind it. So does that all seem right, Ted? Like that's what I want to start with. Do you think my definition of design was good, or should I like?
I mean, you read it right from the web. I mean, I saw the same definition, so that's fine.
Okay. I know that that's more of like a colloquial. I don't know if it's more like philosophical, but yeah, we'll go with that. So I just want to start with some anthropic constants. I had gone through a few. Wow, I have a lot of people tuning in. These people are from you?
Yes.
That's amazing. Well, shalom, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It means a lot.
I am responsible for everyone.
Thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you.
Kneel before me.
Sorry, I only kneel before God. Anthropic constants. So I got these specifically from Jay Richards, who last time I checked, he's written books on astrophysics, but specifically on fine-tuning parameters. And so he had just kind of given just a summary of probably the more important ones. And these, I only put together a few. I think I was told, at least Hugh Ross had said that there are over 200. But I think that there are like different amounts in different fields. So like you have so many in astrophysics, so many in biology, you have so many in cosmology, I suppose, but that includes astrophysics. So first of all, the gravitational force constant. This one is number one for a very big reason, and Stephen Hawking actually wrote about this in his book. Large-scale attractive force holds people on planets and holds planets, stars, and galaxies together. It does not give the numbers here. Some of the numbers are later here. So too weak, planets and stars cannot form. Too strong, and stars burn up too quickly. So it's the idea, and the idea of anthropic is that it needs to be a specific range, or it needs to be in a very narrow space of.
Okay, gravity is due to the bending of time and space. So
Right.
if we want to go and talk about how it needs to be a certain thing.
Yeah, the strength of it. The strength of it needs to be a very specific number.
And it's like that because that's how it is. So there's. I'm assuming you're trying to make the argument that it's exactly the way it is, and therefore, the Magic Man did it.
No, not
That
necessarily.
No, okay, great.
No, I'm just no, and I would say that a case for God ultimately has to be collective, because it is a big claim to make. that ultimately there is a being that is immaterial, eternal, self-existent, right? So I want to continue with more and just show some of the numbers and the probability of these things. So the second one is
But what?
sorry.
Sorry, what's the purpose of trying to go over any type of probability?
Well, because the probability shows that there is, by definition of design, there is design. So with the teleological argument, right, we know from observable science, right, that every design has a designer behind it, right? So anything that, like things that require a mind or an intellect behind it. And so then if the universe lines up with the same definition, or in this case, I think it's even more complexly designed, so it requires a supermind.
But you would have to show that the universe is designed to begin with,
Right?
and you
that's what I'm
you
doing.
can't do that with probabilities.
Well,
You'd have to be making it. You'd be assuming. You have to check it. It's like, oh, it's complex because the probabilities are so high. Therefore, I'm going to take. You have to assume. You have to take a leap from there and say that it was a god.
well,
Right?
not. Sorry.
But you have to do that. I mean, that sounds like what you're going towards. But
Right.
even if you try to do that, you're gonna be back to, okay, you think it was a god, but we have no idea what a god is. So how can you jump? How can you not know how everything came to be? And because we don't know how everything came to be, therefore it was a god, something we know absolutely nothing about.
Well,
Right?
it's more or less forensic evidence to the traits of this type of source or cause. So then the traits of this source or cause, if they align with the, I think that the traits of this cause, as I'll get further into, align with the biblical definition of who God is. I mean, the Bible itself assumes that you know who God is to a point, right? It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Sorry,
we're not really asking who God is. That's not really the question, right? Well, really, I mean, we want to know what it is, right? Because we have no idea what it is.
What is the source?
You have to be able to explain what it is, like what it's made of, where it lives, how it does the things it does, and how are we aware of its existence in any way? Like, how are we? And once we do that, how can we show that the information we just gave is accurate? Like, we have to have that information because this thing that we're speaking of is observable, right? It must be demonstrable in order for us to have that information. Because if we have that information, it must be demonstrable, right? Because if it's not demonstrable, then the information we are giving is made up, right?
Well, technically, but love itself isn't observable. But love brings about actions, which is observable.
Yeah. Okay. I understand a lot of theists like to use the word love, but that's kind of an analogy, right? That has to do with rapport, emotions.
Well, it's metaphysical.
It has to do with your attraction to certain things, your report of certain things, how you feel. It's emotional based.
Yeah.
You could say it's metaphysical, but it has to do with the workings of the brain, and as far as how it applies its preferences to the other to the external world. So
and you can explain how it interacts with the physical world, but it itself is an abstract concept, right? Maybe even not metaphysical, just like math, right? Math is something that is abstract, that it's not tangible, but the numbers are purely explanation, or not even explanations, but they show reality, right? Just like E equals MC squared is a mathematical principle of reality.
Yeah, I get that. I understand what you're trying to say, but the reason why it's a poor analogy was, first of all, I understand, you guys, I'm sorry to lump you in with everybody else, but
no, that's okay.
I have to. You guys like to use analogies when you have discussions with other people, especially people with me. A lot of you think that somehow it's going to get you somewhere, when really analogies are really only supposed to help someone understand a point during the conversation. It should never be used as content to an argument. Like, your argument should not be is an analogy. So the reason why it's bad is not just because it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, because it kind of doesn't. This God thing, whatever it is, because we still have not defined it, is supposed to be something that did something, in the real world, that caused something to happen. Right. A design made everything happen a certain way. So it's not just a thought someone has. It's not just rapport or affection someone has for something. It's supposed to be some sort of real being that does things. So we can't really use an analogy of something that's not a being and say, well, then here's the being. So
right.
To me,
no, I agree.
I like to avoid, if we could at all possible, just avoid analogies unless I ask for one. I think that would be great.
Okay. Well, and I will say I was using that analogy to explain like what something metaphysical is. So if I were to even make the claim that an ultimatum exists, that is abstract, that is metaphysical, is the source of all things metaphysical, is the mind behind mathematics, is the source behind love, right? The love is bound in the character of this being. Truth is bound in the character of this being. So this being would be the ultimate starting point and the source of everything.
Okay, you just
yeah, I just made a big claim, but
but you understand what you just said. I just typed it out so I can refer to it. You said the ultimate starting point of everything, but that doesn't tell us what it is. It gives some. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I see that as word salad.
Well, it's just hypothesizing, right?
Right. But we need more than that if we want to know what we're talking about. Because I love reality. I always
wait a minute. Hold on. I have a quick question. Why doesn't that apply both directions? Like, there's no answer for the ultimate beginning in the evolution model either.
Brother Stephen, I appreciate you. I really do. I just really wanted at least the hour to be with us. But did you want to answer that question?
He doesn't have to.
Something about evolution that we weren't even talking about. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Stephen. I'm sorry, Ted.
Okay. So So back to the point. I just want to avoid analogies and talk about the meat of the topic, because that's what I care about.
Yeah. No, I understand. Is it okay if I go further with the anthropic constants? Then,
if as long as you're going somewhere and I can follow along, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of stuff I have to cover in like a very short amount of time.
Wait, so you did a bunch of research and you made bullet points in a PowerPoint or something like that, and you're going over it.
I put it all in Word, just things that I had found, and like I understand it all, so I it's all like a mess, but I know what it is.
All right, go ahead.
So the third anthropic constant, I know most people know this, a strong nuclear force constant. Small scale attractive force holds nuclei of atoms together, which otherwise repulse each other because of the electromagnetic force. If it were weaker, the universe would have far fewer stable chemical elements, eliminating several that are essential to life. Now, the fourth one, weak nuclear force constant governs radioactive decay. If it were much stronger or weaker, life essentially stars could not form. So life essential stars wouldn't be able to form so the idea of anthropic is that these narrow gates that we have in these constants that we find, they exist to a point where we can have life in a very specific time in the universe. Hugh Ross had pointed out the narrow gap. It's about like 50,000 to like 70,000 years. I'll continue to go further. I'm getting to a point here, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. The cosmological constant, which controls the expansion speed of the universe, refers to the balance of the attractive force of gravity with a hypothesized repulsive force of space observable only at very large size scales. It must be very close to zero. That is, these two forces must be nearly perfectly balanced. To get the right balance, the cosmological constant must be fine-tuned. Use the words fine-tuned because this guy is from Discovery, okay, so just bear with it. To something like 1 part in 10 to the 120th power. So this is a very, very, very narrow gap, essentially, to have the force of gravity with the push and pull to be exactly right. So you essentially don't have the entire universe collapsing in on itself or it all spreading apart, right? If it were just slightly more positive, the universe would fly apart. Oh yeah. Slightly negative, the universe would collapse. I just said that. I didn't even read that, which is interesting. I didn't read all of this. I'll just be clear with that. But as with the cosmological constant, the ratios of the other constants must be fine-tuned relative to each other, since the logically possible range of strengths of some forces is potentially infinite, because also there are some constants that we are essentially still discovering, where scientists are finding these continually and new ones are being added like every 5 years, something like that, to get a handle on the precision of, and again, it says fine-tuning. Theorists often think in terms of the range of force strengths, with gravity the weakest and strong nuclear force the strongest. The strong nuclear force is 1,040 times stronger than gravity. That is 10,000 billion times the strength of gravity. Think of that range as represented by a ruler stretched across the entire observable universe, about
Sam.
15 billion light years. Yes, sir?
Can I chime in now, please?
Oh, sure. I mean, I wasn't really done yet. I was getting the Stephen Hawking point, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going down the road that I hinted at earlier, which was probabilities and trying to come up with probabilities and numbers that seem astronomical and
They're very
fascinating.
astronomical.
But you have to make a jump. Again, you have to make a jump. You have to say, well, since the universe is the way it is because that's how it is, right? That's just how things are. But you're trying to say, well, it's how it is and we're here, so it's so great, so it must be something even more special than it is. It has to be something super special. And then you try to use that to try to convince someone that therefore there's some intelligence behind it, since we're here and it's like this and like that, and what are the chances of it being otherwise? But we don't know how it can be otherwise, because we only live in this one universe that we know of, and we experience how things are the way they are. So, I think it would be gullible for someone to go, oh, well, that sounds so astronomical. You're probably right that there is a God, because you have to make that jump and you have to say, because we don't know how the universe is the way it is. I mean, you think you do, but we don't have the science behind it to show how it is, where it came from, any of that. We don't have that information.
Well,
right?
define science.
Science means to know. It's our knowledge of how the universe works.
Yeah.
So we don't have the knowledge, the science to show that how everything came to be. Did it always exist? Maybe the universe always existed. Maybe the Big Bang is just it changing forms. We really don't know. It could have always existed. We don't know. But
could you prove to me scientifically that Alexander the Great existed, like through science? Could you prove that?
Well, let's stay on point instead of jumping to something.
Well,
that's a person said to exist. He wasn't, required for the Christian religion, like Jesus was, and so nothing important to really.
Well, I mean, he made a huge impact on history.
Sure,
so...
I'm sure he probably existed. He probably did, but it's a lot different to acknowledge a person existing than someone with magical powers. So it's totally different.
I don't want you to, and I understand what you're saying. You know, I genuinely appreciate your opinion, but I don't want you to straw man what I'm saying. I think a lot of Christians will either they say it in the wrong way and they mean something else, or they themselves just don't put their mind into it as much. It's more of their heart, right?
Right.
But
let me finish my
Okay.
previous point.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. When you try to come up with these numbers to try to woo people into looking at it differently and how you want them to look at it, you want them to see it a certain way. But see, that's kind of that's more of the emotional tug and not a factual one. You're trying to get them to see things. Wow, you're trying to wow them into possibly seeing your way of looking at the world and how there might have been a mind behind it. But you're not actually able to show, not actually able to demonstrate that what you're saying is accurate. So that's the big problem because we don't know how, like I was saying, we don't know how the universe came to be here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So since we don't know, we can't make something up. You're trying to say, well, it was a God that did it, and that's the answer. But then we'd have to show, well, first, now we have to know what is a God. How do we know a God did anything? All we know is things are the way they are, and you're commenting on them while you read them. Well, look at all these probabilities and all these stuff, but nothing shows. We don't know what a God is, so we can't say a God did it. So basically, that is actually called the argument from ignorance, where you claim to know how it came to be simply because we don't have anything to show in science how it came to be. So
Right.
if we don't know how it is, because this is what science is all about, knowing how the world works, the universe works. If we don't know, we should not go making up answers and try to fill it in with God did it. That's not an honest intellectual way of obtaining the truth, because truth is a degree to which a statement corresponds with reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is
Right.
reality? Reality is that which is directly ascertained or indirectly ascertained, is directly experienced or indirectly ascertained via the proper use of reason. So if the God existing is a truth, is a true statement, there needs to be something showing that that statement corresponds with reality. And that's what the demonstration is supposed to do. We're supposed to demonstrate that your assertion is accurate. You know what I mean? You made an
Right.
assertion that God is responsible for everything. Well, no one here knows what a God is. The Bible doesn't tell us what a God is. We have no information of what it's made of, where it lives, how it does the things it does, but all the time, everyone's saying, well, it's mysterious. You're not supposed to know it. Well, if we don't know it, then we can't say that we know it. And it would be irrational for us to posit that as the answer if we can't have it to be demonstrable. So
Yeah,
that's the
I think you're
problem I have
right.
with it.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of what you said is genuinely right. And I think those are some very important points. But even to go with that, I wasn't trying to give commentary. If I was giving commentary while I was reading this, I'm sorry if I was, except just saying they say fine tuning, because this is from Jay Richards, who I'm pretty sure I know he's a theist. I don't know if he's a Christian though. But even he doesn't give any of his opinion in this, except just saying, using the word fine tuning. So I'm sorry if I gave my opinion in this, but what I'm giving now, the numbers themselves are just it's science itself, right? But I'm postulating where this might point to, right? I hypothesize and I get evidence. I make philosophical reasoning based off of these things. The cosmological argument is also a big one, where it shows the universe or that time, space, and matter have a beginning, and some would say even energy as well. I think that's
we don't really know that. So,
well, I'm just saying I think there's great evidence for surge. In fact, I did a lot of research on that. Do you know what surge is?
Surge.
Yeah, it's an acronym for yeah, you'll find it when you look it up. But that that space, time, and matter have a beginning. So if space, time, and matter have a beginning, right, then you have this point of ingress, right? This point of immense density and high temperature, and so the ultimate source for that then cannot be time. It cannot have the quality of time, cannot have the quality of matter, cannot have the quality of space. So spaceless, timeless, immaterial.
Yeah, well,
and so
so you're resting it on if time and all that has a starting point. If it does. So.
Not just, well, that's why there are multiple arguments for God's existence. It's a collective case, and it takes you to genuinely think about this stuff and honestly do your own research. Like,
so do you really think that any one of them are sufficient to have a reasonable conclusion that there is a God?
I think that especially with all three arguments, there is an immensely high probability from these that God genuinely does exist, but it doesn't mean that that's the Christian God, right? It could be Allah, for all I know.
Okay.
Or a type of being that is sorry.
If I said that I believed in a blah, would you believe me?
What's a blah? What do you mean by blah?
Exactly. What did you just do? You asked me what it was, didn't you? You asked me. Is that important? Is that important for you to know what it is?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it.
Very good. Then I'm glad you said that. If you're going to say that, all these numbers and the rest of them we're going to read out to show probability that a God exists, can you really believe in something that you don't know what it is?
No, I know what God is, and I know how He's proposed to, like His characteristics.
What is it then? Because I love to know, because no one has ever been able to define a God appropriately in a way that one would define a being that we know of. Because if it's supposed to be a being, and we have experience of beings here on this planet, we know what other beings are like. Like I know what a cat is right here. If I know what a cat, I know what it's made of. I know how characteristics about it. If you can define it in that way, because that's what I know beings to be, then that will be the first.
A self-existent being that is not dependent on the laws of nature or philosophy or any kind of science, but rather beyond those things. That would be a God.
Okay. So that really doesn't really tell us anything about what it is. Most of what you just said was telling us something that it's not. The only thing you told us what it is you said it's a self-existent being, which really doesn't tell us anything about what it. My cat is not. Is my cat self-existent?
No, it's dependent upon the laws of nature.
Exactly. Why should we think that this God thing that we still don't know what it is self-existent, whatever that's supposed to be? Because I don't think any of us have experience with any beings anywhere that are self-existent. So we're not really sure what that really means.
Well,
and then the rest of what you said about, it's okay. The rest of what you said about not needing laws, and then you actually use the word beyond these things, because beyond is relative to each person. It's not something you can really use to define something. It's like using the word higher. Like it's not something
not determined really by. How about that? Not determined by. So in other words, independent of. How about that?
Okay, but how can you say any of those things about it if you don't have information to show what it is exactly, and to say
I do.
that it's not those things?
I do, though. That's what I wanted to get to.
Right. I asked you for that. I asked you for that definition, and you gave me that line. So
well, yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Okay.
But that is also a more personal definition. That's not necessarily like something that has been deeply studied, but I would say that is a good definition of, and again, this is coming from me, a good definition of who a God would be. But when I say that, when I say that a type of God exists, that's just referring to a being that someone, say someone religious would have more of an idea of, like, say, as I said earlier, a being that is not dependent on the laws of nature, but rather independent, right? So it's self-existent, and so it is not bound by those laws.
Right, but do we know can you define exactly what it's made of, where it lives, and how it does the things it does?
Well, it would be spiritual.
I don't know what that is.
Not contained in the universe. So
Okay, okay. I don't want to know what it isn't. I want to know what it is.
do you want me to actually go into?
I want to know
Who
what
I-
it is. Yeah, you said spiritual. I don't know what that is.
Yes, but I have to leave some of my evidence here. I have to actually give you my opinion of the evidence. So my philosophical opinion of the evidence. Because I wanted to finish this stuff.
Okay.
But if that's okay, I can give you my personal opinion.
I know. Yeah, I know you have. I know you have something typed out there, and I thank you for doing that. I mean, you do your homework. You want to type it out. That's good. Keep your thoughts organized and stuff like that. But as you read it, it can't be just a monologue of you reading what you have.
Oh,
I
I copied a lot of this.
Okay,
a lot of this is copied from other genuine scientists
and made into a monologue for you to read off.
Oh, not even. I didn't even type this myself. I literally copied a lot of this.
Okay.
So
let me use a different word. And made into a speech for you to read off.
Sure.
Basically, there's going to be times while you're reading it where we need to have discussions. So I don't think you'll be able to get through all of it because there's a lot of things to unpack whenever you make certain assertions or you say certain things, kind of like the whole probabilities thing that you talked about. That's a whole big discussion. And I'm trying to just show, well, okay, I'm trying to grapple that and show, okay, I'm acknowledging you're giving that information, but I just want to know what you're talking about. So I guess for the moment, the conversation, at least for me, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I want to know what it is we're talking about. Because this conversation, maybe it's our fault for not prompting everyone about what the topic of this discussion would be. So we don't have any title to go by for exactly the discussion is going to be, does God exist or the probabilities of God or things of that nature. So we don't have something strict to adhere to. So we're kind of playing around with whatever happens right now.
Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear.
Yeah, what did you intend to have as the main? Because there's always, whenever there's a debate, there's always a question or something like that. What did you intend to have for that?
Well, what is your worldview, and what is the evidence that you have behind it? Or
me, my worldview, or yours?
No, ultimately it was supposed to be both of ours, but I had a plan B, and so I just thought, well, let's talk about whether or not God exists. And so I thought, let me just go into some of the research I've done and stuff I've copied and pasted. I wanted to give my opinion on it afterwards, but I'm sorry I didn't clarify my thoughts.
I don't want to bring us to certain places when you say certain things, because I tend to do that. I've debated with hundreds of preachers in the streets. I'm used to things going awry. I have no problem with that. But it seems like you want a certain format for this, and I just wasn't sure about it. That's why I commented.
No, and I appreciate that. Again, I'm genuinely sorry. I wish I had made it more clear. I guess
so you have no problem with my questions then about because you're trying to say the probabilities and numbers should lead someone to at least entertain the idea of a God. But then my problem is, well, what is a God, and how can we believe in something that we know nothing about? Which is why I brought up the word blah. Do you believe in blah? And the first thing you said was, what is that? When you say you believe in a God, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what is that? Right? Because we're all aware of all the talking point words and phrases that everyone who's religious uses for their God. They'll quote the Bible to say he is, the creator. He is, I am I, and all the other things that are in the Bible that try to give some sort of vague description of what it is. And they refer to those talking points, but no one ever says what it is. So whenever someone says there was a God, over my years of debating, I think over the last 5 years, I started concentrating on, well, what is that? Because whenever I say I believe in something, like I believe in this chair, I know what it is. I know what it's made of. So I find that an important question to ask.
Okay. No, I definitely appreciate that. I wanted to see if I could find a good definition here.
You won't.
It's all based on religions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking point. You found a talking point, didn't you?
Did you look up? No, I didn't. I just forgot to mention it. I genuinely did forget to, like, I think I got so excited to share the stuff I had researched, and I just wanted to go into it.
Right.
I think
Have
maybe
you-
that.
Have you debated much? Have you debated much with atheists? I know you're saying that this is your second time on this thing, but off of this, have you ever had any deep, long conversations challenging you by an educated atheist?
I would say that I've genuinely had arguments, but I would never say like
Never
an official
structured?
debate.
They were never structured,
No,
or
never structured.
Or okay, I understand that. Okay.
So that's some of my issue. This is a new
Well,
thing for me.
I'm not trying to make you look bad or anything.
No, that's okay.
You can do that on your own. But you know, I just want to. I just wanted to get a feel for your experiences. I don't want to. You know, I want to be proper. I want to be proper
Right.
here.
No, I understand, and I genuinely appreciate that. No, I know it's much better to have that structure so we stay on point.
Right.
And I did have that in mind. I just didn't do it because I got ahead of myself.
Not
I'm still immature and young. I'm only 22, so
22. Yes. How old do
yeah.
you think I am?
You look about 40.
I'll be 51 this month, my friend.
Oh, really? You
Yep.
probably work out, right?
Every day.
Yeah, you probably eat consistently very clean food in the sense of like
Nope.
not like a dirty bulk. Like you try to
No.
be more healthy.
One meal a day, mostly meat.
Really?
No drugs, no alcohol. Never been high or drunk in my life.
That's probably why you look so good.
Yeah, my father was an alcoholic, so I just stay away from that.
Oh,
And,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I drink coffee. That's my only drug, caffeine. That's it. So that helps.
Okay.
But yeah, a little history about me, if anyone really cares.
I do.
I was leaving the military when I was like 20, and I came down here to Gainesville, and it was my first interaction with preachers on the campus, and then my first time debating them. And the reason why I debated them to begin with was because while I was leaving the military, I found a girl I can talk to for hours on end, and I didn't know what that meant until after I left, and I lost her. But the one thing we argued about, and we had never had arguments, but the one thing we did was the whole Jesus God thing. And I think that made me sensitive to it. And that moment thereon, I was like, well, look at how much religion can separate people. Because I could have been with her. Well, I had an easier time being with her if she wasn't religious. And so I think that might have sparked my motivation to take on and discuss more about stuff. So I care about the truth. I'm all about education and awareness. So
Good.
you know, and I think that's important. And whenever someone says something is true and they can't show it to be true, no matter what it is, it just happens that I'm big on religion. But I do other things as well, like the feminist junk that goes on, and the pronoun crap that goes on. You know, I question all that. So you know, it's not
which
just
is good. Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I especially am definitely for truth. Of course, I think Christianity is true. That's why I'm a Christian. But I did grow up as a Christian in a Christian realm. And so I think just it's odd for me when people ask me, like, what is God? It kind of like sets me off guard because I've had people ask me that before, but I think
you gave a half response or what?
Well, I do my best to give. No, I do give people definitions, but it's like, I'm like, this is my definition. This isn't like, I think it's a good definition, and I think other people would say the same. But
Sam, if I told you a blah is an invisible pink uniform that farts green goo, would you believe that I'm reasonable in my belief in the blah?
Well, I think it's reasonable if you have genuine proof for it, or not proof, sorry, evidence. If you have evidence that not only is forensic, I don't think it has to be empirical, I think at least forensic and even just philosophical. I would say mathematically, does it work mathematically? Sorry, I stuttered there. So I am more big on philosophy, and that's of course more of why rather than science, which is how.
Right.
So I get the idea of there's a mind behind the universe from philosophy. That's a philosophical idea.
Right, but it is just an idea.
Well, yeah, but like so is me proposing that we do a debate, right? But
we're not trying to assert that a debate is a living being that
no, but it's an idea.
is invisible unicorn.
Well, when I say God, if I were to say God is living, a living being, I think that God is abstract, an abstract concept that is not concept even.
Yeah, that would be really bad if it was a concept, because then he wouldn't be real.
Well, he would be. Boy,
Is it right?
Yeah,
I
no.
mean, you said well, I'd believe you if blah had some evidence behind it. Now you know how I feel about this God that you believe in. Now
No.
I want to know. Well, how do you know? Because I want to know the truth, Sam. I mean,
Yeah. No, and
I care about the truth. I really do. I always want to be correct. I have absolutely no sacred beliefs whatsoever. At least I don't think so. Is it possible I could still have someone somewhere? It could be. It could be. I don't know. I haven't discovered it yet. If someone points it out to me, guess what? I'll stop believing in it because I do not allow anything that I believe in is not resting on emotion of any kind. I have no qualms with stopping belief in anything I believe in because my happiness in life, my comfortableness in life does not depend on what I believe. If I need to find peace or happiness or something like in life, I find it regardless of what's true or not. I acknowledge what's true and then use it, and then I find my peace and happiness, after that, within the confines of reality, I find my happiness and my peace. I don't need to believe and Tinkerbell in order to have any kind of happiness in my life. Belief of what's true or not doesn't give me happiness. It's a state of mind, so it's separate. So because of that, and because I realize that gives me the objectivity that I need. So whenever I get to some new information that someone come across that I've heard about, I'm able to look at it objectively. I have no emotional ties to it whatsoever. Whereas I would have to say, I mean, there's got to be some acknowledgement from your end that religion is mostly emotional based. Your parents teach it to you. It depends on where you grew up and what religion you are. If you grew up in a Muslim country, you'd be Muslim. It really depends on where you are and what you believe in. If you had a different set of parents in the U.S. like mine, and you weren't brought to church, then you weren't indoctrinated as a child, and maybe you wouldn't believe. It really depends. So because there's no real definition, and all I see is a lot of emotion in it, then that to me sets off a red flag. If you're correct, because we don't know if there's a God or not, right? I'm not going to say that there is no God. If I do, I can only say it with as much confidence as I can say that there is no Peter Pan or Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus, right? I say it because I say there is no Tinkerbell because I think it's something we made up, and there's no evidence showing it is. I can't disprove it. I can't show Tinkerbell doesn't exist, but because it's silly to me and there's no reason to really give it time of day, I don't believe in it. So I extend this same idea to any God that anyone has, unless they can show me otherwise.
Right.
But if you can't show me otherwise, I will believe, because I'm not someone who runs from reality. I never run from reality. I always I always go with what shows to be correct.
Which I appreciate, but I will say this: you clearly have emotion for truth. You have feelings for truth.
Yes,
that is
that is true.
Right.
That is true. But that passion that you see for truth does not have an allegiance of a certain kind of truth. It's
just the cold hard truth.
Yes,
which I appreciate. I always hope and pray that I will always be like that and not be biased. I try to look at what I believe, why I believe it. That's pretty much always.
Do you think you're that way now? Do you think you're that way?
I think I'm a lot more that way. I'm a lot more skeptical, but in a good way, right? So like I have questions. I have like healthy questions, not to the point where I like being a Christian. It's literally my life, right? So if I just stopped becoming a Christian, it would literally destroy me. I mean that sincerely because
why would you
I
think
have.
that?
Well, because not only would it ruin a lot of the jobs that I do, I don't really get paid for any of them. It's all volunteer. But also like my foundation is ultimately Jesus Christ and the fact that he has risen from the dead.
Yeah.
And because of that, I can have eternal life and freedom from suffering because of him. Right. So I based my entire life on him.
Can I tell you a quick true story?
Sure.
You know of a man named Dan Barker?
No, I don't think I do.
Dan Barker, he wrote a book called Losing Faith in Faith. He was a preacher for almost 20 years. He preached a lot ever since he was a kid. And he just wanted people to know the information he had. He felt it was true. And he wanted people, he preached a lot. He was in church one day, he heard someone talking, and the preacher said something, and he's like, I wonder if that's true. I'm not sure. I mean, is that true? So he went and he looked up the thing. He's like, whoa, that's not accurate. That's not true. And for 5 years, he went through that, questioning, well, this isn't true. What else isn't true? Oh, this wasn't true. Oh my gosh, this wasn't true either. What is going on? He went through a horrible 5 years of his life. He lost his wife and his kids. He lost the life that he was used to, the happiness that he felt that he had at the time, all because belief is not dependent on a conscious decision. You can't just decide to believe in Tinkerbell, and just believe in Tinkerbell one day and the next day you don't. Belief's determined by how educated you are or not educated you are on something. And by that process, your subconscious makes that decision for you, does that for you.
Right.
So he went through 5 years of literal hell, and he wrote songs that he still gets royalties from, religious songs, and the piano. He still likes to play the piano today. He goes to atheist meetings. I saw him in quite a few. He likes to play piano for people, and he got nice music and stuff like that.
Wow.
But he started to work for the Freedom from Religion Foundation. He met that woman who runs it there and fell in love with her, and now he's living happily ever after with her. And so his life is okay now. But I say this story because I want to come back to what you said earlier was you think your life would be destroyed. Your life would not be destroyed. It would just be different. And
I guess you're right. Yeah, I think I would have to go through those 5 years of pain. It would probably be a little more for me, but no, and I appreciate that story. I've heard of stories like that. But I think that it would really change. It would change who I am for quite a bit of reasons. I'm psychologically tied to my beliefs. Ultimately, I mean, anyone who believes anything
do you think that's healthy?
Yeah, I think it is because I genuinely believe it's true.
Do you think I'm psychologically tied to any of my beliefs?
I mean, you're tied to truth, so yeah, right. Psychologically, you are to a point. I mean,
okay. Do you think that's healthy?
I think when it depends on what it is. So, like, if
it's the truth, it's a truth. We're talking about the truth. Do you think that's true? It's healthy for me to be so passionate about it. Do you think that's healthy?
Yeah, I think it's healthy if that's your. I don't know all your heart's intentions, right? But from what I can tell, I believe personally that is healthy.
Okay.
So, but we're almost out of time. I
didn't mean to sidetrack that. I don't know if I'm
no, it's okay.
or not.
No, that's all right. if you want to do this another time, I know
Sure.
Isaac Miller wanted to do next week, but I also still want to do what the channel or what the not podcast, but the live show is called. We're the Great Revival. I'm to encourage Christians to evangelize. So
Right.
it's
A little pointer for next time. We should have a topic, and
Yes.
if you want to have a certain thing to talk about, which would be the topic, only a few bullet points would be really required. You don't really need a page or two of stuff.
Okay.
And then we'll go over that, and there'll be a lot of things to talk about. Just going over those bullet points.
Okay.
That should last
I see
the
what you
entire
mean.
time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I think that's a good idea. I think the cosmological argument has so much unpacking. It's like really deep, and there's a lot of like deep science in it. But if you want, because you said you didn't know the acronym SURGE, I think you should maybe study that a little. I know there's there are quite a few good books on it. I know quite a few from a Christian perspective, but I do know that Fred Hoyle became a theist based off of he actually called it the Big Bang in the first place. That was just a cool fact. I don't know if you knew who Fred Hoyle was. He was an astrophysicist.
Okay. The SURGE stands for the universe is expanding. Edwin Hubble, you may know him because of the telescope. Blah blah blah. Discovered that there was the redshift. Yeah, I know about the redshift. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This I come across quite often in my discussions. A lot of times theists try to say that since we have the Big Bang is a theory that rests on facts, right? So we have some facts like the redshift and other things, and leads us to think that it's the Big Bang. But really, the Big Bang, we really cannot explain. We really don't know about it. We can say that it's a point, but we really don't know what that point is. We don't know. We have no reason to think it's a point of creation. For all we know, it could be a point of change, right? The universe could have existed in a different form before then. Doesn't mean it started right then. And that's the problem with a lot of the theist argument is they think, well, because the Big Bang, it was, it started then, had to be a God. And then they use that argument when science does not show that to be a creation point.
Well, and that's why, I do think that a lot of scientists have shown that it does. I disagree with you, of course.
Well, there's no data on it. Otherwise, I would have come across it.
And go into depth with SURGE, right? That stands for second law of thermodynamics, and it also includes the first with it.
I'm sorry, but the second law of thermodynamics only pertains to closed systems.
No, but it shows that the universe had to have had a beginning because of the law of entropy, because it shows the idea of running down, right? The first law shows there's a very specified amount of energy in the universe. So if there is a type of running down in that you have energy itself being unusable, becoming unusable, so then you have this running down effect, so it must have had a start. If it were infinite, then it wouldn't exist currently, right? So it would defy the law. So a steady state theory would break the second law of thermodynamics.
Right, but the second law does not pertain to the entire universe. It only pertains to closed systems within the universe. That's the whole point of the second law.
I guess I've never heard that before.
It only pertains to closed systems. That's it. It can't. Okay. It can't. Because there's a lot about. Shoot, why am I drawing a blank right now? Quantum mechanics. There's a lot about quantum mechanics, quantum physics that we don't know about, right?
Oh yeah.
So to say that, there's a limited amount. There's a lot about the universe that we don't know about. The second law just refers to a closed system that doesn't receive energy, and then that's when those things apply. So,
I guess from what I've studied, I've never seen that. I've heard from like astrophysicists and cosmologists who are in fact not even theists, who say that that the second law points to a beginning. I can't name them off the top of my head. I didn't write them down, but just from okay. But the U stands for the universe expanding. The R stands for. I'm drawing a blank too. The R stands for radiation.
Radiation, afterglow, great galaxy seeds, and Einstein's general relativity.
Yes. Which
Yeah.
I would say that radiation, Einstein's theory of general relativity and special relativity, and then the first and second law of thermodynamics are the biggest pointers to some kind of beginning where, or space, time, and matter have a beginning.
Right.
Right. And so even if there is still things beyond that, which I actually, when I was researching, I read an article, I think it was Science Today, maybe it was something else, but they were talking about speculations with dark matter and with quantum mechanics, how it is possible that there were things existing before the Big Bang, before the singularity. But even if that's true,
it's quite possible, because we really don't know what that means, right?
Yeah, but even if say that is true, right, which I think it's possible, but you still need a source and a Kickstarter for the Big Bang, and to have that point of infinite density and high temperature.
Which is why quantum mechanics is so interesting, because the matter comes in and out of the universe. Everything pops in and out of the universe. So
I remember doing.
We really don't know all there is to know about that. It could be responsible for everything that is, in a way. We just don't know. So it's really we really should not make conclusions about how the universe is if we don't even understand something that's so complex as quantum mechanics that could hold a lot of explanation for how things are. For all we know, it could explain the universe and how it is. It could explain how everything is. But we don't have that information yet. We're still in our infant stages of learning about quantum mechanics. So
I agree.
Because of that, we should not be positing deities. We should be positing, religions or joining any groups or anything like that. Because my idea is that when we join groups and we join religions, we outsource our thinking to somebody else. We stop thinking for ourselves. We're like, oh, I don't know how to think properly. Would you please do it for me? So that's why I'm not on the left. I'm not on the right. I don't belong to any religion. I go by. There is no group out there that, okay, we only care about the truth, and that's our group. I've never found a group like that. But I would join that one.
So that would be your religion, the truth religion.
There you go.
And I appreciate that, but I will say that Christianity in and of itself. So there's a command that God gave to the Israelites before they were a genuine nation. This is in the book of Numbers. It is actually, I think it's Leviticus. Actually, I think I'm wrong. I think it's Leviticus. It is the greatest command, and Jesus references it. But it is the greatest command to ultimately all humankind. It is God's greatest commandment that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So in Christianity, it is literally that you need to love God with your mind. So me doing this research is just a very small piece of that, right? So I don't just go off of like a whim, but I actually try to understand and comprehend things and use logic, right? Because I believe logic is God-given. I believe science is God-given, philosophy is God-given. So
you made the statement that the Bible says something, so you follow it.
Because I think it's true. So then I follow the commandments with that.
We don't know who wrote that in the Bible, right? Or what their purpose was, or what their intention was.
Well, I have good reason.
You think you have good reason to believe in it, but we really don't know who wrote it. Has it been edited over time? And so a person wrote it. We know a person wrote it.
Yeah, a person was involved.
You want to think that a God was involved in the writing too, but that is an extra belief that cannot be demonstrated. So you're saying, well, the Bible says this, so I'm doing something that God wants me to do because I read it in the Bible, when really that was a person writing it, and you don't know for sure.
Well, I think it can be. I don't want to use the word proof here because I know. I don't think proof is a good word, but I think you can find good evidence for this, right? And that's why I still believe the Bible is true. For the Bible being influenced by God. So in other words, a super intellect, superhuman, supernatural being influencing himself in the writing of
if that were true, scriptures. We wouldn't have Exodus 21.
What's about Exodus 21?
Condoning slavery. We wouldn't have that.
Oh, I don't think it
it
does it in the way you're thinking of.
No, it does. It does.
Oh, well, I would love to get into that.
And it wouldn't tell you to not eat certain foods because you just need to cook it better, not to eat.
Well, they didn't know that at the time.
Exactly.
So...
Oh, no. If God had something to do with the Bible, he would have known that beforehand.
Yeah, so he told them to don't eat those foods, because ultimately it was for their health safety.
He could have told them to cook it. He could have just told them to cook it better. Right?
Yes, but they didn't have the technology at the time to do that. So instead, the specific commands for the idea, because they're spiritual or they're physical commands that bring about
God
a spiritual.
Tell him how to cook it.
Well, he could have, but it's not about that. That's not why God did it the way that he did. It's because it brings about a spiritual change in the people. Because God even said that I want you to follow these commands with your heart, right? So then if God genuinely exists and he has created us, then our purpose, or at least a purpose given to us, at least I think you could philosophically argue for this without the Bible, that it would ultimately be to obey him, right? And so then the greatest thing you could do is love him, or rather obey him in love. If you get what I'm saying,
we would have to accept that the Bible that God had anything to do with writing the Bible in order to adhere to that. And since you can't, it's not demonstrable to someone who doesn't believe, because a lot of the words you use, you want to believe with all your heart, like you said earlier. Those are emotionally tugging words, right? They prey on your emotion, not the facts.
Yeah, but God created.
I
believe God created emotions, and they're good. You can use emotions for good things, right?
Right. But we need demonstration to know that what that book is from a God. We don't have that information.
Well, I think we do, but I think there's other evidence for that. I think
I've never heard any good, and I've been doing this for 20 years.
Have you ever read the book Evidence That Demands a Verdict, or more? It was by Josh McDowell originally, and then Sean McDowell with I don't remember how many people were involved, but Sean McDowell and Josh McDowell made a new update to it, and it's specifically the evidence for Jesus's resurrection. Did it happen or did it not happen? Right? It's going through the archaeology, the history. Like, is this just a false claim that Jesus rose from the dead, or did this really happen? And so it's more from at least I think, I haven't genuinely read it myself. I've just heard lectures on it. But from what I think, it's more skeptical. Yeah. I know there are more skeptical versions of evidence for Jesus. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually question the existence of Jesus altogether. So
Bart Ehrman doesn't, and he's an atheist too. That's another thing. I did want to say that actually, that secular scholars agree that Jesus not only existed, but was crucified. And
sure.
I could give you a quote.
You can give me quotes. You can tell me that people band together and say he was real, but it doesn't really add to the validity of the claim.
Well, here, let me
because whenever
it's a historical claim, right?
Yeah. Well, yes, it's historical, but the problem is that early Christians didn't really believe in a real Jesus, and during Jesus' lifetime, no one ever wrote about him. So, and then you guys try to say, well, no one could really write back then. And then
they could write. They definitely could write. We have philosophers.
I was told otherwise, but
I don't know why you're told that.
So no one ever wrote about him. Everything that was written about him was way after the fact. So
even Josephus wrote about him. He was Jewish.
That was interpolation to his work. It's largely.
No, I'm not talking about his corrupted stuff, because I read his corrupted stuff. I think that is fake.
There's only one paragraph, one long sentence of referring to Jesus in his work.
Yes. I'm talking about the uncorrupted, the most recent.
His earlier versions didn't have that paragraph in it, which is why they feel it's interpolation.
No, I know what you're talking about, and
he wasn't even alive during Jesus' time. He was born after the fact.
Last time I checked, I thought he was alive. But,
No.
But even so, just because I wasn't alive, just because the historian for George Washington, I totally forget the guy's name, wasn't alive during that time, doesn't mean he still can't get good information about whether or not he existed and what he did, right?
You're trying to make a point. You're using an analogy to try to make a point. I understand.
Oh, sorry.
I fully understand what you're trying to do there. It's okay. It's just that Washington was just a person, not a religious figure that is so relied upon for religion to exist. So it's a little different. I've plenty of conversation in the past where I just gave someone the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, well, what if Jesus did exist? There's no reason to think he was more than a man, and then they have to struggle with that. So I have no problem with that.
Sure. Well, let me just read some of these quotes from Wikipedia, okay? Because they actually give quotes from books. So Amy Jill Levine in The Historical Jesus is the Okay, this is from a... Let's see, where are the quotes? I lost the quotes. Oh, here it is. Did I find it? Here's Bart Ehrman's quote, who is a secular agnostic, actually. He's not atheist.
Sorry.
He's very skeptical.
Everyone is either an atheist or a theist 100% of the time.
I get what you mean. He doesn't believe that God exists. How about that? But
he doesn't believe God exists? What?
No.
Oh, he's an atheist.
Okay. This is what he wrote. He certainly existed, as virtually every competent scholar of antiquity, Christian or non-Christian, agrees, based on certain and clear evidence. He wrote this in Forged, Writing in the Name of God. That's 2011. Robert M. Price, who actually denies that Jesus existed, wrote, it does not give a quote. He just says, it just says, agrees that this perspective runs against the views of the majority of scholars.
Right. Majority of scholars. And that's what it boils down to.
Right. Michael Grant, and I don't want to just do appeal to authority here, but I'm just saying what people say.
But do we really have more than that?
Oh, yeah. I really do. I mean, again,
I would love to hear that.
Yeah. I think we could do that in a different show, and we're running out of time, but
sure. Yeah.
Could I just end with one last thing? I just got 5 minutes. I want to share why.
You're not afraid of me, are you?
No. I will pray for you. But that's because I care about you. Like, I believe it's true. And but here, I just want to share this. Okay.
Sure.
So if Christianity is true, this is assuming it's true. Okay. So bear with me here. Morally, do you think you're a good enough person to go to heaven? Heaven would be a place of eternal peace, right? No suffering, no pain. And God gives it to those who are perfectly righteous or good people. Do you think you're morally good?
Do you think okay?
Do you think of yourself as morally good?
I'd like to say for the most part, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So
there could be another God that exists that sends me to heaven just for being an atheist, and sends. No, I'm being honest. I'm being truthful,
okay.
And sends you to hell because you did not use the logic and the reason that it gave you, and it's punishing you for not using what it gave you.
Okay.
Sometimes I give that to theists.
Yeah. Technically then that's a religion because you're claiming a deity, but anyways, I don't want to get into that.
It's just
it's postulation.
Hypothetical.
I think that's great.
Whenever someone gives me that argument, what is it? Pascal's wager. Whenever they give me that, I
I don't like to use that, but
it's been beaten.
Because like if the Muslims are right, then I'm also going to hell. So
right.
I need to know what I believe is true. Okay,
yeah,
is my religion true or?
I really hate Islam. Tell you the truth, my friend. It's much worse.
Have you ever lied before in your life? Like said a lie?
Are you doing the Ray Comfort thing to me? You know I debated him before, right?
I didn't know that. No.
Yes, I debated him actually down at Huntington Pier in California. He likes to bring his little church group out there. They pretend to be his audience, and they form a circle around him while he's doing debates and stuff. I have it on my earliest videos back in 2013.
Oh wow!
Of me debating him and his ilk. But yeah, he tries to say that. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's not just about Ray Comfort here. I'm trying to get to a point. But have you ever lied before?
Sure.
Okay. Have you ever stolen anything, like regardless of the value of it, something small?
Yep.
Okay. So
By this, you're meant to go to hell. Blah 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 blah.
no. Have you ever used God's name as a curse word?
Every day.
Okay. Have you ever?
Well, I don't use God's name in vain. I use the word God in vain.
Right. I
don't
mean
think
that
it belongs to anything.
Right. No, and I understand that, but ignorance of the law is no excuse. So
What you're doing is preaching right now. Actually, was what the person
well, I'm
said to me.
asking you technically,
Right,
but
but you're gonna have a follow. You're gonna have a conclusion. So
to be
Go
fair,
ahead.
if you want to leave, you can.
no,
but
go ahead.
Okay. Jesus had said that whoever looks with lust commits adultery in the heart, right? That's also another commandment to not commit adultery.
Yeah,
Have you ever looked at a woman with lust before?
That's a really bad commandment. You know, a lot of the commandments are pretty bad and shouldn't be used.
Well, that's a moral claim.
But yes. Every day I look at something. I lust at something. Definitely.
Okay. And of course, lust is the idea, at least in that context, of a sexual desire, right?
Yeah.
So Jesus says specifically for men, but it still applies to men looking at men or women looking at men or women looking at women, right? It's just it's essentially creating fantasies before the intent, right? If the purpose of life is, if part of your purpose of life is to wait until marriage to have children, and ultimately then in marriage, then those things are bound, right? Like sexual interactions, lust itself. So then if that is true, then that means
Can I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
The whole thing about marriage, that's not really too practical much anymore. Marriage, although you might still think it's good because of your background or the people around you or whatever like that. Here in the USA and other Western countries, men do not benefit whatsoever from marriage, and we are raped and divorced, or I'll use the word "graped." We are graped in divorce court, taking our money, taking our kids, taken from us, losing our house. Just our lives are destroyed because the women are favored in the courts. So, although it might be nice to say, okay, you're married. I mean, I like the idea of marriage. That just the fact that it's tied up in the government. I just think it's a bad idea to try to encourage marriage when it has extremely negative effect on men, especially in this country. I would have to say, scratch the idea of marriage. And just in a loving relationship where you are monogamous with them and have love for them, I think is just as strong and just as good without having to use the word marriage. And I think that's more practical.
Yeah, I understand, too, where you're coming from. I just think that in the Christian view of what I understand, and I see this in my parents specifically, it's bound on ultimately love specifically, and that commitment helps drive their, even though they don't feel like always they love each other, but that commitment helps them to continue to obey the idea of loving each other.
If you find the right person and you click really well with them, you'll always feel it.
Sure.
It's just about having the right person.
A
quick quip on that, if I may.
Sure.
I have met a few women in life where that is true, and you notice very quickly that you could spend the rest of your life with them.
Right.
So you usually do. Usually have it lifelong.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, getting back to what I was saying, I think that is what matters. And what you were saying as being together and only, being monogamous with them, that's sure. But the only thing I disagree with is if you're not with someone and you don't have that, there's no harm at all in lusting because it's all in your head. Just the other day, I was at the park and I saw this, what appeared to be a passport bro. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a guy who finds a mate from another country and because he's given up on all the women here because they're entitled. And they have issues. So he was much older. She was younger and looks like she was from a different country. So I lusted very hard over her. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay.
And I didn't find anything wrong with that because it's all in my
Right.
head. And just the idea of religion trying to control your thoughts, which is what I see that as. I think it's bad because why would a God care about what you believe and what you think? It shouldn't be able to control you. And I don't think it's wrong to allow yourself to be controlled by a religion like that, which is what the followers like you allow to do. You think, oh, God cares what I think, what I believe. I think that's really wrong. But go ahead and continue.
Yeah, beliefs dictate your actions, right? You have belief in your chair that'll hold you up.
But right. But if I lust over her, I'm not going to go grab her ass and take her over a over bench.
But it could turn into something more. So the idea from God then is that because he is, and again, this is assuming Christianity is true, okay, but God is morality, right? He is, so essentially what is good, because that is ultimately positive. Evil is actually the lack of goodness, right? So goodness is bound in God's character. So if he in his character says that lust is wrong, right, and he genuinely exists, then that means that truthfully, by definition, lust is wrong. So this is all assuming, that's why I said earlier, assuming Christianity is true. But to go further with this, so I appreciate your honesty with me. I'm not trying to judge you because I am a sinner too. Okay,
you know what? I need to comment on that real quick because that really irks me right there.
Okay.
Not you specifically, but this whole thing about it comes a lot from the Christian religion. It tells you not to judge people. People judge people every day, all the time. It's a good thing to do. I think society should be self-correcting. I think if you're doing something wrong, someone should judge you and call you out on it. I think it's beneficial. So it's okay
I think
to
you're
judge
right
people,
to a point, yeah.
as long as you do it in a reasonable way. If you judge people and you are correct, if you are the one carrying the logic and the reason with you, and you show that they are wrong, then that judgment is good. If you judge someone and you're wrong, and you come from a backwards way of looking at it, and you try to judge them, then that's wrong because you're feeding them bad information.
Yeah.
So
I think you'd be a great Christian. That's a great theological truth. But no, I think you're right. I'm more of meant the idea of I don't mean to hurt you in saying that, like condemn you.
It's really hard to be offended.
Yeah,
I really can't be offended.
Okay. I'm glad then. But I'm a sinner too. I've broken.
Being offended is a choice. So
yeah, I agree there.
Yeah.
So I have broken God's laws while I've sinned, right? In the idea of the word, which means to miss the mark. It essentially means missing the mark of perfection, right? You're missing the mark of true objective morality, right? Goodness, right? So if you are to genuinely stand before God on the day where God will judge you for your sins, do you think you will go to heaven or will you go to hell? According to just the Ten Commandments we just looked at,
we're assuming the Christian God is real. In order for me to answer that question?
Yes.
I really don't know. I really wouldn't care. I really wouldn't care at that point. Because if the Bible is accurate, and that at least, well, it can be interpreted any which way actually. But if your version of the interpretation of the Bible is accurate, then I would have a lot of questions, and I would have no respect for such a deity.
Okay, and so when God says, then, okay, if you don't want me, then I send you to hell, then that's just of him, because he's not only giving and loves you in the sense that he'll give you what you truly want. Right? Like say Dawkins, who says God's a big old meanie. And then when God says, okay, you get to be away from me, this assuming Christianity's true, that is perfectly just and also loving, because his sins are being paid for in his punishment. And if
he was really loving, he would let me into heaven no matter what.
That's not real love.
It's true.
He doesn't force you into something you genuinely don't want. That's not real love.
But he'll send you. Well, if it's better up there, then I would want it, right?
But what if you genuinely don't? Because you'd be with God. That's the thing.
I would have to know what heaven and what hell is like
before
I can make that decision, right?
Right.
Maybe I'll have a better time in hell. I don't know.
Right.
It depends. But if I wanted to be in heaven, then he should just make it. He should just make it happen. Because if he's all loving, well, all loving person tortures some. If that's what hell is hell is torture. What all loving thing would torture something forever? Was that really loving?
Well, it's not God torturing you.
Sure
it's
it is.
ultimately yourself torturing yourself.
Well, no,
he's
he's responsible for making hell, right? He's responsible for everything.
Well, he originally made it for the devils and his angels, but because
Right.
Jesus continues to say that because of the hardness of men's hearts, that God also has expanded it for human beings when they say, I don't want God. And so he essentially sends them there. They say, I don't want God. I don't want anything to do with him. I pretty much hate him. And so whether they genuinely will say that out loud, but that is their heart. And so God sends them there saying, you don't want to be with me. So hell is everything. It's ultimate separation from God. So it's the idea where there's no goodness, no truth, no righteousness. There's no love, no mercy. It's everything bad.
Well,
So
I wouldn't know anything about your God or any heaven or hell until that happened, if it even capable of happening. So I wouldn't know anything until then. It doesn't matter how many people like you I talk to, if what you're saying is true. Doesn't matter how many times I talk to people like you. I wouldn't have any information, any of that is true, until I got to that point. So for him, he would not be able to judge me accurately since he gave no evidence of his existence. So me showing up there right then, I would then possess the information that it's real, and not before then. So I cannot be held accountable for not following whatever the Bible says or you interpret the Bible saying. I would not be held responsible because I had no demonstration of that reality to go by to convince me that it's accurate. So I would as soon as I arrived there, I'd have to be like, okay, oh, so this is true. Okay, then tell me about heaven and hell. Which one is which? And do I get to choose? And then we'll just weigh our options for them. I'll probably have a few words for him. Like, is this all true? And, well, you gave me no reason to believe in it. So what's the deal now? Do I get to choose? Do I get to make my decisions? What's going on? And then I'll handle it from there. That's how I would handle it.
what if it's possible that even just the fact that you're talking to me now is God genuinely trying to reach you? But
he's
in
doing a very piss poor job.
Well, we haven't
because
had
if he is it doesn't matter if he is it doesn't matter, because if you had information that would convince someone like me, you'd be famous. If he is all powerful, he knows why I'm an atheist, right?
Yeah.
He can make me not an atheist, right? But
but that would be against but that would be taking away your free will.
Okay, but so then his only hope is to get people like you to convince me using emotion.
Well,
right?
I don't mean to just use emotion.
Well,
I mean to
and without being able to demonstrate it, you hope to convince me. Without being able to demonstrate it's true, you hope to convince me, and that is his reasoning. Oh, I'll just get these guys to convince them. I'm not going to give any evidence go by, but if he gets them to convince them, then I'll send them to heaven.
Well,
like,
to be fair,
it doesn't make any sense to me.
To be fair, I didn't meet you before this night, and yet I still prayed for you before then, and I care about you even more now.
To me, praying is just someone talking to themselves and to speak to a God. That's what it means to me. I don't see it as useful in any way.
And I wanted to go into the gospel, and maybe I won't share it tonight. I'm sure you've heard it a lot, just that Jesus ultimately paid for our sins, right? On the cross.
Why couldn't he have done it? Why couldn't he have just said, okay, I forgive you, without having to do a human sacrifice?
Well, it's not human sacrifice. It's God sacrificing himself. It's God coming into the picture.
So Jesus wasn't human?
He was God in human form.
Okay, so he was human.
Yes, God. Well, no, not human in the sense of like us.
So it wasn't a human. So it wasn't a human sacrifice because he wasn't fully human.
No, he would have been human in the sense that he had a physical body and physical limitations that he placed on himself, but he himself metaphysically or spiritually, in the sense, I realize you don't know fully what I mean by that, but was God. So
okay, and was it really a sacrifice if he came back 3 days later and never really died?
Well, it was a sacrifice in all the pain he went through. Crucifixion is the cruelest way to die.
Tell me, do you think there are people on this planet who would go through that just to have the power after?
What do you mean, just to have the power? I know people
Right.
have crucified themselves for really bad reasons.
Right. But if they knew they were going to come back and have magical powers, do you think they would do that?
Well, Jesus had magical powers already. He raised
Okay.
other people from the dead.
Okay.
So
I just don't see it as a sacrifice, really, because sacrifice means you lose something permanently. That's what that means.
I mean, he has scars, but I think it means sacrifice in the sense that he bore spiritually bore the sins of the world so that the payment could be made, and all those who accept the payment for their sins ultimately through repentance and trust in Jesus Christ then can have eternal life. They're permitted eternal life.
Why can't God
that.
just make that happen with a wave of his hand instead of doing that?
I don't have the full answer other than God wants you to see his love genuinely expressed in the cross.
And you know that because the Bible says so.
No, the Bible doesn't necessarily. I mean, it does say that, but I got that from before.
Okay.
Like, I just Sorry.
So you know that. So you know that from the Bible. Or you don't know that from the Bible.
Well, I know the Bible says that, but I didn't get it from it saying that. I know.
You got it from
I
somebody
know
else?
this. No, but I love God myself because I know of his love personally. I can't share that with you, but like I understand the cross. I comprehend why Jesus had to die the way he did. But I can't just give you that. I wish I could. I wish I could give you my mind, give you my brain, and show you the subjective experiences I have had with God, but I can't give you that. All I can do is try to reason with you, and there's we'll have to end here.
Right.
But I hope that we could do this another time, and I could go further into some of the arguments that I have. I think.
Guess we didn't have time for anybody to ask questions or anything, huh?
Sorry, guys. I know you had so many. But Ted, this has been a great experience for me. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for the time.
I hope again that we'll do this again, and yeah, I mean keep seeking truth. All right.
I'm always seeking truth, my friend. Always.
Great. Well, just so you know, I was going to have Brother Ryan Daniel close us off with prayer. You do not have to stay for that. So.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Have a good day.
All right. Yeah. You have a great day. All right.
Bye.
Wasn't that great, guys? That was awesome.
It was very interesting.
That was,
yeah. He sounds like one atheist I had talked to quite a while ago that I had done an interview with, and he brought up a lot of objections that I heard from that person. I was like, it just, he sounded so much like him. And I forget the guy's name for the life of me, but a lot of like, well, I want truth. That's what I really seek, but I haven't been presented, almost like I haven't been presented good evidence, or like, I just don't think there's good evidence. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So still open-minded to a point. He's not like militant.
Right.
You know,
Right. He mentioned a book by a guy. Can you remember his name? Barker or something like that?
it was like Dan Barker.
What's that?
If someone wants to put it in the chat, that would be great. But I think it was like Dan Barker.
Okay, something like that.
Maybe like Dave Barker.
That, for every Christian that loses faith, you have at least one atheist that comes to faith. And I was thinking Lee Strobel, of course.
Yeah. Lee Strobel was Dan Barker. Thank you, guys.
Dan Barker, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Lee Strobel, we have, and Josh McDowell, people like that. All I can say is, you're still learning the ropes, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel, I think you did a pretty good job. Just from my perspective, it looked like you guys were talking past each other.
Yeah.
It's because you each have a different worldview. He has a totally secular worldview. Only if my five senses can't detect it, it doesn't exist. But you have a biblical worldview,
Yeah.
So
I also am more artistic.
Hmm?
I'm more artistic and emotional, right? Like I make meditation videos that I think are absolutely amazing. And I literally, when I make these videos, I literally see God's handiwork, but in an artistic viewpoint, right? So I do these based off of tons of emotion, but he almost has this idea like emotion is almost bad. I don't think he actually thinks that, but I do think that Lee Strobel is a great example of like this kind of more militant style atheist coming to Christ and God like really getting a hold of him, because he's
Lee Strobel was
presented.
very
He just was. He presented himself before truth, and then he essentially was like, "It's my bias holding me back from saying," because he's presented with all this, and he's like, "It's my bias holding me back from becoming a Christian," and so then he goes to.
Everybody has bias one way or another. Right?
Oh, Ted the Atheist said, "Emotion shouldn't be used to make conclusion on what's real or what's insofar as beings in the universe." Yeah, and I think that was what he said originally, which I think that he's right. It's just that emotions will always be behind it regardless, because that's just how a human body works. That's how you work psychologically. That's how you work, how your body works, like in how hormones are created. They you're like physically broken, like certain autistic kids, right? They have hormonal issues. Like either they have tons of hormones in one instance and none in the other, but.
Yeah. I wanted to. Now you have Ted's contact info, so you can invite him back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know Stephen wanted to say some things.
Yeah.
And maybe I wanted to say a few things. It'd be nice if he wanted to come to the general Proverbs Guys Lions Den chat, and he could talk to Stephen and Achilles and Jeremiah and you, and it could be just a. Hopefully it wouldn't become pandemonium, but it could be we could each contribute. But I think you did a good job considering you're still new at this.
I'm definitely new at this
for a long time. He's been doing this for a long time, so he's good at debating. I was going to ask him if he'd ever been on Standing for Truth's channel, with Donnie Budinsky, because Donnie Budinsky has had a lot of atheists on his channel, Standing for Truth. Have you watched any of his videos, Samuel?
No, maybe like a clip or two, but I did want to have better structure. I just thought when I asked him for like what is his worldview, I thought he was going to say like materialism or naturalism. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so we present evidence based off our worldviews, and he was just like, no, I don't really like have it. I'm more of a skeptic, and I'm like, oh. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of threw you off because
so then
I have no belief.
Yeah, so I left out clarifying stuff because I wanted to work off of that. So I had this plan, and it's fine. You can be a skeptic and just I'm just saying, like, I genuinely thought he was going to be like materialist or naturalist. But
I would have asked if there was, another word for God, of course, is creator, because he created the universe.
Right.
He created the universe. Now, if you believe that the universe exists without a creator, I would like to see someone demonstrate that the universe created itself, or that nothing created the universe from nothing.
Right, which is what Peter Atkins said and what Stephen Hawking said.
Yeah, I don't believe that nothing can create things. Mm-hmm. Some people do. Some people think that things just poof into existence magically. Well, without a magician, though. Without a magician.
Well, and Stephen Hawking's nothing is a quantum vacuum, so it's not technically nothing. But the idea of nothing is because you have a singularity. It philosophically, you need nothing to then have that singularity, then have something. I forget how that comes to be. We can't use the word nothing. It has no context in science. We don't know what it is. It's no thing. That's what it is. It's nothing. So the word nothing is something, but nothing is genuinely nothing. So
I don't know what nothing is. Yeah, we do.
Okay, you're confusing me here.
So
I'm kidding.
But
I think interesting night. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, I thank you guys for the support, and I'm sorry I wasn't as well structured as especially a lot more people. I'm definitely new at this.
Yeah,
I'm more used to giving people the gospel and encouraging Christians, which is what I have been doing for years. I don't really do debates. I always try, like when I talk to people about the gospel, I always try to lean back into the gospel because I believe it's genuinely important, right? Like, that's just what I aim for. I have never really aimed for just a debate, I guess. So
Have you ever thought of bringing the gospel into the debate?
well, I tried to at the end, but he's clearly heard a piece of it before, but I think a lot of the words and just the Christian jargon he just doesn't understand because, like, he's not in that worldview. It's just, as you said earlier, he's in a secular worldview. So a lot of the words are like, huh?
The only
genuinely
thing is what my five senses can detect,
Yeah.
It's like a fish in an aquarium. That aquarium is all that exists.
Yeah.
Maybe he can see things outside of it.
Yeah.
Maybe if he's in a room, he can see things in that room, but there's nothing outside of that room.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they think. That's how they believe,
And
this Travis.
Yeah, take care, Ted. Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
It's so funny. I mean, LOL gospel. I mean, this.
You can laugh at it. That's fine. From your worldview, it looks. If I were an atheist or a skeptic, or if I held to a materialistic or naturalistic worldview, I would think the gospel is weird because